Yeah, I can sit.
Okay.
Take off my shoes.
All right. I'm Dana Foster, and you are watching the Women's Online Network, and thank you so much for watching. We are here at the 2019 Indigenous Women's Gathering, and I'm now chatting with Stephanie. We just got off of doing a big panel discussion here about women, Indigenous women in fashion. Can you speak to that a little bit more about how you have overcome some of those obstacles being an Indigenous fashion designer?
Absolutely. So fashion just basically was an alternative coping mechanism to help me get through life and to help me overcome the adversities that I kind of was faced as a child. Growing up, you have to be in the midst of society and kind of try to fit in, but in reality, like, you grew up and you have all these issues, you know, so you go around wearing a mask. So I wanted to be the type to take off my mask, be real, embrace my authenticity, and fashion just became that platform to help me to do it. I was able to do whatever I wanted within, like, in my heart and soul, like what I wanted to design, what I wanted to say, and basically it was just like, it was a way for me to self-express and tell the world who I was without even having to say anything.
We talked a lot about complex trauma, and you've just spoken to that as well. Mm-hmm. It's a conversation that we don't, as Indigenous people, have too often. Probably we do, but in terms of business and being open about complex trauma and how it affects us in business or in your industry as well. How did you become comfortable talking about your trauma and your complex trauma openly?
Well, I became comfortable with it knowing that I needed to heal in life. I wanted to be this whole person. I didn't want to be broken. I wanted to just be strong. I wanted to be a role model. How was I going to do that? How would I teach someone something that I didn't even know myself? So in order to heal, you have to go through the pain that you went through and allow it to teach you things, allow it to teach you lessons. So every time I would talk, I would cry. Every time, the more I would talk,
me too,
the less I would cry. And you know that, you know, healing, the more you share your story, the more it heals your heart. And I was given a platform, and I want to be able to just give this.
You got it.
Yeah, I was given a platform, and I want to just continue to share and become like a mentor to these youth and show them, man, your better days are ahead. And I just feel like super blessed to have overcome a lot. And I want to give back. I want to give these youth hope. I want to, like, that is my passion. As someone who grew up having nobody to kind of like support them, mentor them, give them that security, I wanted to be that level of security for people. I wanted to show them, you know, like,
you can do it.
You could do it. Yeah. You know, it's not impossible. You know, like.
Yeah. Well, I think that Indigenous women have a lot of obstacles, and we spoke to that a bit. How can Canada be better at being more sensitive to some of those barriers and some of those mountains that we have to overcome? What can we do to teach Canada to help Indigenous women succeed?
Absolutely. So I believe that Canada can actually communicate and get to know, like, these interviews that you're doing for me, like the awareness that we're putting out there, like by sharing our stories, just by listening, you know, in a non-judgmental way. Like, a lot of people didn't grow up the way we grew up. So it's our job to kind of share our stories, to educate them about, like, the intergenerational trauma that we went through. Like, some people just don't even know, so how can they empathize, you know? And I just believe that Canada can just provide that safe platform, like that non-judgmental platform, to hear us out and listen and see what they could do to help bridge that gap, or help to, you know, strengthen us as a nation and not separate, you know.
So we're talking a little bit of sort of the shyness that some Indigenous people do have, and learning to use your voice and learning to share your story so other people understand us. what advice would you give to an Indigenous person wanting to seek a career in business or start their own company? What advice would you give them about sharing their voice or using their voice?
My advice would be to give them to learn to be completely authentic, learn to be completely real, learn to not care what anybody thinks about you. And it does, like, you do have to work at it, because there's a lot of opinions, there's a lot of things to distract you, but at the same time, you just have to focus on your own path. Each of us were given our own journey, our own path, our own purpose, and to embrace our authentic path. I think that's basically what is going to give you the confidence in who you're supposed to be.
Well, you actually, okay, another question. Because you did talk about God and faith, and that plays a big part in how you continue to overcome some of your barriers. What led you to that? Because that's kind of a taboo conversation itself within Indigenous cultures because of the trauma and so forth.
Absolutely.
Like, how did you get there?
Okay, for me personally, I came from, like, my grandmother, who kind of like raised me. She was very traditional. My parents, who had their flaws, like they dealt with like alcoholism, and like there's like a lot of trauma that they dealt with. They believed in God, and at that time I got like two perspectives, and at that time,
normal, a lot of
So I've seen two different times, but what really, now I'm gonna get real and raw.
Yes.
What really got me to the point was, like, when I was growing up, I literally faced a lot of like pain, where I dealt with like suicidal issues. Like, I literally didn't want to be here. So I myself stood there and I questioned God. I was just like, I heard about you, God, because I was ready to not want to be here. Like, literally my life, like literally I raised myself, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But I asked God, I was like, if you're real, you will stop me. And literally I was just ready just to give up on life. I was ready to like quit everything. I had nothing and no one to kind of like support me. And I was, like, basically, short story, I'm going to be celebrating my 35th birthday coming up. Obviously there's a God. He like
How did he stop you? How did that stop
do you want me to literally go into, literally
I was going. I'm not going to force you, but if you want to share, because a lot of people, I've gone through suicide. Suicide struggles as well, and I think a lot of Indigenous people do.
Okay, so let's just redo them. Okay, so when I was 13, my dad had abandoned us with my little sister. We had nowhere to go. We were homeless. We were faced with like such a hopelessness. My mom was an alcoholic. She was not in the picture. I had nothing to live for. Like, I literally was depressed at my lowest. I didn't know why I was here, basically. And a lot of people try one time and that's it. Man, I was literally trying hundreds of times and things just wouldn't happen. And this last and final time, I was completely just done. I was gonna go to the forest and I was just gonna go, whatever, it was pitch black, it was dark, and I was just gonna go commit suicide because I didn't want to be here. Like, I was a broken individual, a broken young person who had nothing. And so I basically was inconsolable, walking, it was dark, I was crying, and I literally like looked up and I'm like, God, if you're real, like, you will stop me. I said, because this is it. I said, I don't want to be here. I don't want to live anymore. I'm done. I said, and I was walking and it was dark, and suddenly in the bush, I heard like footsteps. Like, I heard footsteps and I stopped and I froze and I'm like, oh my gosh. I was like, I don't care. I said, I'm still going to go. And I was walking and I had whatever, and I was so determined. I was so focused, and I was just like, I don't care. And I went walking, and then again, the footsteps, and then something literally started running after me. it was like at first, and I was like, I don't care. And it was like, and it was getting closer, and it was pitch black. I didn't see anything, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And it was like something was running after me, and I dropped whatever I was doing, and I like literally was like, I'm so sorry, God. Obviously, like, please protect me from whatever that is. And I booked it all the way out, and obviously there's a God. Like, that was like I'm still
Thank
here.
you.
You know, I'm still here, and
for that, yeah.
yeah, it completely transformed, and I'm like,
Here, and
your better days
inspiring.
are ahead. Seriously, like, man, things are gonna change. Seriously, like, and I just want to share my story with the young people. You know,
Don't give up. And it's really hard, I think, too, especially when you're in rural communities.
yeah,
It's hard to remember that you're not isolated.
Yeah.
You're not in
Yeah.
this cave or this cage. You are actually free, and you can have those little moments that change you. So thank you so much for sharing your story and being part of this. And it was great chatting with you and great meeting you. And I'm so I have goosebumps. I'm so inspired. I am ready to take on the world too. So thank you.
thank you.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much for watching the Women's Online Network. And if people wanted to check out what you do, where can they go?
So my line is called Lysias Designs. It's C.Lysias Designs, and it's a fashion line. We provide a platform for youth to come on and share our stories through fashion. And Lysias Designs is fashion with a passion to give back.
Fashion and a passion. Oh, I
Come
like
check
that.
out my fashion. Yeah,
I like that with the passion. I like it. Fashion with a purpose.
fashion with a purpose. Yeah,
Podcast with a purpose. That's what I'm
absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Oh my God, see, like I'm super awkward.
You're hard into something and you do it with good intentions, that the outcome is always probably going to be in your favor because it's coming from a good place.